Welcome to Namrata's EduHub. Today we learn Biology, Chapter 17, Breathing and Exchange of Gases. So let us start with respiration. Respiration or breathing, it is a process of exchange of O2 from the atmosphere with the CO2 which is produced by cells. O2, that is oxygen, is utilized by the organisms for the process of metabolism like glucose, amino acids and fatty acids. Through this process, there is the production of energy. This energy can be utilized in our daily activities. In case of CO2, it is harmful in nature as it is released during these above catabolic reactions by the cells. Thus, respiration comprises of two things. One is inspiration and second is expiration. Inspiration means the air that is inspired and expiration, that is the air that is expelled out. Thus, respiration is the process comprising of both inspiration as well as expiration. Now we'll talk about the respiratory organs present in invertebrates and vertebrates. The lower invertebrates like sponges, flatworms, etc., respiration occurs through the process of simple diffusion. In earthworms, moist cuticles are there which are responsible for respiration. Tracheal tubes are the network of tubes present in insects through which they respire. In case of fishes, they are having gills. Gills are the vascularized structures. These fishes respire through the gills, that is termed as brachial respiration. Frogs or other amphibians also respire through moist skin. This is termed as cutaneous respiration. In case of vertebrates like humans respire through lungs. Lungs are the vascularized bag-like structures through which respiration occurs. So, we do respiratory system in humans. Humans comprises of lungs through which they respire. Lungs are 2 in number. So, let us study where they are located. If we are considering this as a lung, the dorsal or posterior part of the lung is vertebral column, the ventral sternum, the lateral sides with the ribs as well as the lower with the diaphragm. Thus, the lungs are surrounded by vertebral column posteriorly or dorsally, sternum ventrally or anteriorly, ribs laterally on both the sides, and at the lower side we'll find domes of the diaphragm. In this figure you will clearly see the location of the lungs. Now we'll do respiratory tract. Respiratory tract are 2 in number. It is divided into 2. Upper respiratory tract as well as lower respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract comprises of nasal cavity, pharynx and larynx, while the lower respiratory tract comprises of trachea, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. We'll study the respiratory tract in humans. We have a pair of external nostrils that is opening above the upper lip. It leads to the nasal chamber through the nasal passage. The nasal chamber opens into the pharynx. What is pharynx? Pharynx, it is a portion of which the common passage of food and air passes through it. Pharynx open through the larynx into the trachea. What do you mean by larynx? Larynx is also termed as sound box. Larynx, it is a cartilaginous box through which the sound is produced. During the swallowing, the glottis can be covered by a thin layer which is termed as epiglottis. Epiglottis is a layer dividing the larynx into the trachea. When the epiglottis is open, the air enters into the trachea. It prevents the food entering into the trachea. What is trachea? Trachea, it is a straight tube which extends up to the middle thoracic cavity. It divides into two at the level of fifth vertebra into the two bronchi, right side as well as the left side. These bronchi are termed as primary bronchi. Each bronchi undergoes repeated divisions, and thus the name is given as secondary and tertiary bronchi and bronchioles. These bronchioles end into the terminal bronchioles. Thus, the trachea, primary, secondary, tertiary, and the respiratory bronchioles all end up into the alveoli. Now, what do you mean by alveoli? Alveoli are the vascularized bag-like structures. The branching network of these bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli comprises of lungs. Thus, in humans, we have two lungs, right side of the lung as well as the left side of the lung. In alveoli, there occurs exchange of the gases through blood. Here in the figure, you can clearly see that there is intake of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide through the blood vessels. So if we are considering this as a alveoli, the air is there present in the alveolar sac, and surrounding this alveolar sac we are having the vessels or the capillaries, pulmonary capillaries. Now, during inhalation, the air enters into the alveolar sac. The oxygen diffuses into the capillary, and the carbon dioxide enters again into the alveoli for exhalation. Thus, there occurs diffusion of gases through alveoli and capillaries. So, this is the process. Diffusion of gases occur across the alveolar membrane, where the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place between the blood and the tissues. Here, utilization of O2 by the cells for the catabolic reactions occur, and the release of carbon dioxide, that is release of CO2, occurs. This CO2 is exhaled out of the body through expiration. This is the structure of lungs. Here you can clearly see the trachea, that is the windpipe. Trachea comprises of cartilaginous rings. The presence of these cartilaginous rings prevents the trachea from collapse. The trachea divides into two bronchi, right side and the left side bronchi. The bronchi is further divided into the secondary and tertiary bronchioles. And the last is respiratory bronchioles or terminal bronchioles, which end into the alveoli. And below the lungs, you can find the diaphragm. Now we'll see pleura. What is pleura? Pleura is a layer protecting the lung and dividing the lung from other organs. Pleura comprises of two layers. One is parietal pleura and the second is visceral pleura. What do you mean by parietal and visceral pleura? Visceral pleura is the innermost layer of the pleura, while parietal pleura is the outermost layer of pleura. Between these two layers, there occurs a cavity which is termed as pleural cavity. The pleural cavity is filled with the pleural fluid, which is responsible for reducing the friction between the pleura as well as the lungs. Thus, what are the functions of pleura? It divides other organs from the lungs. It provides lubrication and cushioning effect during respiratory process, that is inspiration as well as expiration. It reduces the friction during respiratory process, that is inspiration and expiration. It creates the surface tension to maintain the position of the lungs against the chest wall. Thus, pleura is the protecting layer of the lung. Thank you for listening attentively and hope you would like it. If you have any queries or doubts, do comment on my video here.